So I'm going to work through how to do the target heart rate. So we're going to download this HTML file to our lesson 3 folder. And it does work best if you use Chrome or Firefox. Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer are not really good choices for downloading because they sometimes will change your file. So I'm going to right click, save link as, and let me get to the correct folder here. So I'm just going to save it right here. And then for heartbeat, which is the graphic, I'm going to throw that into my media folder. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up target heart rate in VS Code. Oh, of course, this opened up over here. Okay. And I'm going to pause while this is opening. Okay, so I have this open in Visual Studio Code. And I think I'm going to open my folder for lesson 3 just so it knows. Yeah. That I am in lesson 3. There we go. And if you look through here, you'll notice I am pulling in a Google font. I do have the CSS listed here so you guys can kind of take a look at it as a refresher, since it has probably been a little while since you have actually used it. And then we'll kind of go down here. What you're going to be filling in are the missing functions. So in order to do that, it is helpful if you kind of look at the IDs that I have set up for this little form. And we'll go ahead and open this in the browser too, so you can kind of take a look at it. Okay, so it's a little form. We've got the age that is going to be entered and the resting heart rate. We're going to hit calculate, and then it's going to calculate a target heart rate down here. Okay, so that is the plan. So looking at what we have, you can see I've got my input area, which I've given an ID of age. I've got this other input area, which I have called resting HR for resting heart rate. I have a button that is going to call Calc rate. And then I've got kind of a regular reset button that's going to call clear text. Okay, so the Calc rate function and the clear text function are being called by clicking those buttons. And then you'll see I have a couple different paragraphs with IDs that I'm going to target. At the bottom, you can see I have a little script tag here that is putting the focus on the age entry box. Okay, so here ID is age. So when we first load, okay, that is why you can kind of see that blinking cursor in the age box. Okay, and that's just a document get element by ID dot focus. It's just a little function we're calling. So we're going to start with the calc rate function. And I do give you kind of written instructions, but this can be a little confusing. In addition to the written instruction, I'm actually giving you real code that you need to use, but I'm going to walk through how this works, just so you understand everything. So I'm going to move this kind of out of my way, and I'm going to go back to VS Code. And so we've already added or downloaded the file. We've got the thing open. And we're going to start up here in our calculate function. So what we first need to do in this function is retrieve the data that was entered in the form. We got to validate the data, and then we have to calculate the heart rate and display it to the user. So we're going to create an age variable, and we're going to set that equal to document.getElementById age.value. So we're basically going to be pulling whatever they've entered in here. Okay, so in that entry area, this entry area, whatever they enter, we're going to pull that in and put it into the age variable. Now, when you enter anything into these boxes, the browser creates a text entry. So what we have to do is we got to convert it to a number. And we're going to convert the age to a whole number. So we're just going to use parse int, and int is short for integer. Okay, and that will convert it into the number. And then inside the parentheses is where we are going to target whatever they enter into that input box. Okay, so we're going to pull the value from the input box, convert it to an integer, and store it in age. So at this point, we should have the age in a variable. Now we're going to do something very similar for resting heart rate. In fact, we'll do parse int again. And it's going to be almost identical to what we have up here. So I'm just going to copy and paste. The difference is the ID is resting HR. So I actually am going to highlight that, copy, and paste. Okay. So now I've got both of my variables. They're converted into numbers, and I'm storing them. Next, I'm going to declare a little message variable, because I do need to display a message to the user. Now, you don't really need to initialize this, but I like to, so I am. It's not really necessary because we're going to be putting the message into that, but it's just a habit I've gotten into. So at this point, we got our variables, and we are going to validate our data. So the first thing we're going to do is check the age. We need to see or make sure that it's a number. And if it's not a number, obviously it's an error. And we're also going to make sure that the age is not greater than 99. Although, you know, a 99-year-old probably is not going to be doing a whole lot of intensive training. So our little condition in our if is going to be something like this. If is not a number, and what we need to check is the age. Okay. So we're going to take the age that we retrieved and we're passing it to is not a number. Okay, so if it's not a number, or using our logical or the age is greater than 99. Both of those are error conditions. Okay, either one of those, if they are true, then we have a problem. Okay, so if it's true, we've got a couple different things we have to do. First, we're going to set the display message to a prompt. And we'll say, please enter your age. And we'll ask them 15 to 99. Okay, so that's our little prompt. Then we want to blank out the age that they entered because it was wrong. So we're going to say document dot get element by ID. And the ID we're targeting is age. And we're going to set the value, which is that input box, to blanks. Okay, so they entered the wrong thing. Now we're blanking it out. Okay, and because this was a problem, we are also going to set the focus to that age box. So this is very similar to what we just did. So I'm going to copy a portion of that and set the focus. And focus is a function, which is why it's got a left and right parenthesis after it. Okay, so that's checking age. So if either one of these is true, it's going to execute all of that. Now, if it's false, well, if it's false, it means age is okay, but we still need to check resting heart rate. So we're going to have another else and an if, and we need to check to make sure the resting heart rate is a number, and we called it resting HR. So if that is not a number, or if it's 0, if it doesn't equal 0 and it's less than 20, or it's greater than 100, those are all going to be errors. Okay, so it can't be 0, it can't be less than 20. Honestly, less than 20, I think, would be impossible unless you were comatose. And resting heart rate shouldn't be greater than 100 either, because maybe you should not be exercising if it's that high. So we are going to say resting HR doesn't equal 0, because that's a problem. And the resting HR is less than 20, or the resting HR is greater than 100. So basically we're saying it can't be 0 and it needs to be less than 20 or greater than 100. Now, because of the order of valuation, how we did this is fine, but for readability, if you wanted to throw those parentheses in, that's perfectly okay. Okay, so we've got this or this and that condition. So if any of these are true, then what we're going to do is kind of do something similar with resting heart rate as we did with age. So I'm actually going to copy the age one. As you'll discover, I try to avoid doing excessive typing. All right, so please enter your, so now we're going to say resting heart rate. And the range we want is 20 to 100. And then we'll say, or 50 if you don't know it. Some people don't know what theirs are. Then we have to blank out what they entered. Okay. And so now we're blanking out that entry area. And then we got to put the focus on that entry area, because they need to fix it basically. So if there's not a problem with the age and there's not a problem with the resting heart rate, then for our last else here, we get to this point, hey, all of our values are good, and we can actually calculate the target heart rate. So what we're going to need is a low-end calculation, and then we're going to calculate the adjusted heart rate for that. And then we're going to do a high-end calculation and do a little calculation for an adjusted heart rate for that. And then we're finally going to just create a little message for the user that tells them what their adjusted heart rate is. So it does not matter to me what you call these variables that we are going to be creating. So I've got variable, let's see, I'm just going to call this low HR. Let's see, low HR equals, and this is going to be 220 minus the age that we converted minus the resting heart rate. And all of that goes in parentheses. And we're going to multiply that by 0.50. And now we're going to make a little adjustment to that, where we basically take this low end heart rate and we add in the resting heart rate. So I'm going to call this adjusted low heart rate equals my low heart rate plus, and now I'm going to add in my resting heart rate. And so for the high end, it's going to be similar. So I'm going to have a variable that I'm going to call my high end heart rate equals. Formula is very similar to this, but the percentage that we are multiplying by is 0.85. And the adjusted high heart rate is very similar to the low calculation. It's just that now we're taking the high heart rate that we calculated, we're adding in the resting heart rate. So at this point, I have my adjusted low, I've got my adjusted high, and I can format a little message. Now this is why I said that you didn't really have to initialize message, because you'll notice that we're filling it in. So if there's an error, we're filling it in, and if there's no error, we're filling it in. So it's going to have something in it. So we're going to be telling them your training heart rate is between, and I'm going to put a little line break in there. Okay, so that's my string, and you'll notice your strings can have your HTML in it. And now I need to display what I calculated for adjusted low. So I'm going to concatenate that with a plus sign. And I'm going to say adjusted low HR. And I'm going to concatenate that with another little text string and you'll notice that I put in a space before and after, because if I don't do that, what happens is it smashes the word and against the number, and I don't like the way that looks. Okay, and so we're going to do another little concatenator here, and this is going to be our adjusted high heart rate. Okay, and at this point, we should have everything done, but we have not displayed our message yet. So after that closing brace for the else, we're going to say document.getElementById. And we're going to target the paragraph down here where we've got an ID of feedback. So that's where we want the message to display. Whether it's an error or it's their target heart rate, we don't care. That's where the message is going to go. Okay, and inner HTML just sticks it right in between the opening and closing tags there. We're going to set that equal to the message. Okay, so at this point, why don't we save this? And let me reload this. And so let me add something that actually should work. All right, so that looks fine. Now let me add something that is wrong. Okay, see how it blanked that out and it's displaying us the error message. Now let me add a bad age. Okay, so I'm just testing to make sure everything is working. All right, now what the clear all is going to do is it will automatically clear out these boxes, but the reason we have a function that we have to create is because this doesn't get cleared out. Okay, so we have a little more work that we have to do. First of all, we would like, if they go ahead and do this, we would like for them to have a nice little message that displays below the heart rate. Okay, so we want it to say, you know, have a great day or whatever. And so that is what we are going to code up next. And let's see. Let's go back over. And right below that message, we are going to call our thank you function, which we're going to code next. So we don't really want to call the function unless we know that the age and resting heart rate are good. So if the age is true and the resting heart rate is true, okay, which means they were good, because if they were false, then we got in here and it made them re-enter it. So if they're both true, that means they were good. Then we're going to call thank you. All right, so now we're going to code up thank you. So the idea behind the thank you is to give them a little different feedback each time they come in here. So we are going to use a random number, and we're going to use a math function to get that. And we're going to use it with a switch statement. So first thing we are going to do is declare a random number variable. And I'm going to be very creative and call it random. Set that equal to. We're going to call the math random function. But what that is going to actually retrieve is numbers with the decimal place, and we only want a whole number. So we're going to use math.floor to round the number down, and that will give us a whole number. Okay, and then inside math.floor, this is where we're going to call math.random. And it's a function, so we have to have the parentheses. And by default, it gives us a number, I believe it's between 0 and 1. So in order to get a number between, let's say 1 and 7, what we have to do is multiply it by 7 and add in 1. Okay, so that will actually, let me put a parenthesis here. Okay, that will give us a random number between 1 and 7, and math.floor is going to get rid of the decimals. Okay, and that's exactly what we want it to do. Okay, yep, let's get rid of that. There we go. That is how it should look. Okay, so we're multiplying by 7, and then we're adding 1 so it doesn't start at 0, basically. So at this point, we got our random number, and we're going to do our switch. And what are we switching on? We are switching on random. So if it is a 1, whoa, we are going to have a thank you message. And we'll just say, have a great day. And break. We'll do case 2. And we will have another message. In fact, I'm going to copy this. And let's see, break. So we got to figure out, we're going to do this through case 5. Happy trails. Okay, I think you guys are getting kind of the idea here. I'm going to do a Tigger one. We'll do ta-ta for now. Does not matter to me what you guys put for these. You could be quite creative if you want. Here we go, number 5. See ya. All right. Whew, that was a lot of work trying to get 5 in there. So we still have a couple of cases that we need to account for. Case 6 and case 7. So what we're going to do is set a default message. And hit it when it does that. So you have to come up with one more. Holy Toledo. Toledo. All right. Break. Okay, so if it is a 6 or a 7, we're going to get the default. Otherwise, it should go in and access whatever message we have selected. Then we are going to have to, right below our switch, we've got to update the paragraph that we are targeting. So it's going to be the thanks ID. And this is our TY message, which I did not declare. So I'm going to declare that up here. And you don't really have to set it to blanks because we are definitely filling it in, but I just like to anyway. It's good practice. So at this point, we should be able to get our thank you message. So let's see, fingers crossed here. As long as I did not make any typos, it should work. And if I keep hitting calculate, I should be able to see my different messages. All right, we are almost done with this. So our last task, when they hit clear all, is going to be to kind of erase these two message areas. And so basically all we're going to be doing is setting those inner HTML sections to blanks. So let's go back in here. So you'll notice that we do have it calling clear text when they hit the reset button. So on this one, you see how we're setting it to the thank you message. I'm just going to copy this. And I'm setting it to blanks instead. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for my other one. So let me save, go out here, and we're going to reload. And we'll put in, and let's clear. And that does appear to work. Now, it did not put the focus back on age, so that's just kind of a little extra thing that you could do. It's not required for this, but it is kind of a nice little touch if you want to do that. So all you'd have to do is take this, copy it, paste it down here, and save your changes, and it would be all set to go.